And all of us are but blips in this universe that we speak of.
Yeah.
It's the truth. We're meaningless.
And that from that we can derive whatever meaning we like also, we
Yeah.
That's
can just be
true.
so grateful and joyful. It's like, I think it's all true all at once, everything that we've all said.
Exactly. There are no rules. It's just like this podcast. Welcome back to Whyte Noise. We are joined this week by a wonderful person, a wonderful musician, my dear friend Michael. Michael, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great to be here, Ryan and Michael. Thank you for having me.
So, Michael, you are not as familiar. So, how the show works is we each were given a topic by last week's guest. Ryan and I each have 10 minutes to talk about whatever the subject is. And whatever it inspires in us, we get our little mini TED Talk. Then you get to pick a winner of the episode, whatever that means to you. And just a recap as to how I know you. So Michael and I, we connected originally, I think, on Instagram, like pandemic time.
Yeah.
Michael's a really wonderful musician, as I said. And we had this idea to do Moira Rose doing Danny Boy and did a whole video. And we did it in Michael's studio, and he put together this amazing, like, orchestrated it, did this incredible arrangement. And we made, like, one of those, like, 90s style, like, in the recording studio music videos, but if it was Moira.
It was so much fun. I love that. And hilarious, too.
So is this what you do? Is this what you do full time? Like, that's impressive. I can't even fathom what it takes to do all of that nor pull it together.
It's kind of all I do. There's many applications of the same skills, is what I'd say. I make arrangements. I work with, children's choirs. I score for commercials, shows, TV shows, arrange my own music. And, even when you're teaching a lesson, you're really just drawing from that same knowledge and playing with the same idea. So you're always kind of growing that same skill set. And yeah, it is. It's cool. It's sweet. It's really sweet, beautiful work, I think.
Like, this is so random, but it immediately made me, and this is probably the weed, but it made me think of Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
I relate to that character.
Yes. Confession, I've never seen that movie.
Oh my God.
I know.
So
I should probably go
good.
do that tonight. Actually, I'm going to stop now. Ryan, you win. And well, speaking of also, Michael, your amazing talent. So you have an album that people can listen to.
My most recent, label work is a solo effort, Michael Brown, and I'm on Isotopia Records. It's the same label that George Clinton is on. And I have 2 singles out with them so far, a third one coming out in the next 2 weeks or so, and a full album on the way called Lullabies at the Apocalypse, which is something, I've been working on for quite a while. And I'm really, thanks for giving me a platform to plug that too. I hadn't even thought of that.
Oh, of course, because you sent me one of the songs, which I listened to, The Lady of, how do you say the
Lady
last
of
right?
Jobim.
Jobim.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Such a good song. I highly recommend. Go find it on Spotify right now.
And I just gave you a follow.
Aw, thank you.
Okay, so
Are we ready?
Ryan, remind us, what is the topic for this?
The topic is, I guess it's not a word as much as it's, are we in a simulation? Like, is our world really just a simulation? A little bit of the impetus for it was our guest last week gives the topic to her students. Oh my God. I'm forgetting our guest last week's name because I'm a terrible person.
Michelle.
Oh, Michelle. Oh my God. Michelle, if you're listening, I'm sorry. It was the weed. So that's what I'm going to use as my excuse for all of this. She basically gives it to her students and said it was the most interesting topic that she gets her students to talk about.
She gives the weed to her students, yes. Don't you, Michael, to your little kids that you teach music to?
They don't need it. They're high on something else, just like.
It's like, would that mellow them, or would they just go even faster?
I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe we can get some data on that.
But yes, I love that she's like with her advanced students when they just like run out of material and she's just like, you know what? Do a project on this. Are we in a simulation? What is life? Is there something else out there?
And the spiritual world too. There's a very spiritual world implication, I think also. It's like, you could look at all of that just, where these bodies that we're living in, the spirit, the mind is not where the consciousness is somewhere else. So isn't that kind of like a simulation in and of itself without it being like a matrix thing?
Oh, completely.
Inherently, yes. Which I think is kind of incredible.
Yeah, I love this stuff. I I didn't do any extra research, but I have to admit, just inherently, to use that word again, I'm a big dork for this sort of stuff anyways. So what if I think it's a tie? Or ties allowed?
That
No
could be a
ties?
tie.
Yeah,
Or
why
one
not?
time the guest declared themselves the winner.
We're in your simulation.
You can decide that our overlords are the winners.
You guys are in trouble. That's what I think.
Ooh. Okay, who would you like to go first?
You go for it, Michael.
Oh, okay, yay.
Ready,
Yes.
set, go.
Okay. So when I think of sort of simulations and other worlds, where I go to is how much we try and tackle this concept in entertainment as far as like artists, because it makes me think of some of my favorite plays and some of my favorite movies. I think part of the reason this is a story that comes up a lot is because we as people, I bet somewhere in our brains we know that there's something else. Like, I think we had a guest on once named Beth, who is sort of like a medium, like a psychic, like she has figured out a way to sort of connect with ghosts. And she happened to say something similar where she was like, well, there's a space in between life and death. Where she was like, we don't know what it is yet. She was like, imagine it like Wi-Fi. If you tried to describe Wi-Fi to people 100 years ago, they'd think you were insane. And she was like, it's just that space after we die is like Wi-Fi in 100 years. We just haven't figured it out yet. And so I love that in stories, we keep trying to figure this out. And just to sort of go through some of my personal favorites that it made me think of. The first one was this play Constellations, which was on Broadway a few years ago with Jake Gyllenhaal and Ruth Wilson. It's not necessarily are we living in a simulation like The Truman Show, which is another favorite, but like this idea that there are many, many, many different universes and many, many different versions of us. And the moment you make a decision, there's a split in the universe. And so like there's another you who in that moment, another universe is formed where you go one way or the other. So it's sort of like if you drop a coin and it like heads and tails both hit. And it's like, which one? So the play was you follow this one couple and every time they make a decision, the play changes. So it was like watching them get together took, I want to say 9 universes where like they met, they did their meet cute and he's like, can I get your number? And she's like, no. And then the lights like blink. And then he's like, can I get your number? And she's like, yes. And then like you sort of keep having to follow different universes to get them to where they are. And then it's actually really sad because eventually she has cancer and she dies. And it's this really sort of sad story. And then the question is, it was a satisfying love story until it got really sad. And it's like, well, which one of those universes was probably the best ending for them? Which one did they get their happy ending? Because I don't think it was this one. And it sort of just makes you think like, how many versions of me are there? It's like there's this other great movie called Another Earth from 2011, which is a little indie film. And the idea is that there's a complete duplicate Earth floating around out there, at least one. And one day it comes close to our Earth. And we make contact and find out that there's an exact replica of us on this other Earth. And our Earth does a lottery and you can win a ticket to go and you can swap with your other self. And it's about this girl who had this really tragic thing where she was driving drunk and she kills I want to say she kills a family, or she kills a little boy and a wife and the husband survives. And she's tortured by it. And she wants to go find her other self to see if her duplicate self didn't make that decision. And then spoilers, she ends up getting the ticket and giving it to the guy whose family died. Cause she was like, maybe your family still is alive on the other Earth, which seems nice. And then when you think about it after, you're like, but wouldn't he still be alive too? So then he goes and it's like, I mean, the tricky things with those alternate things, because you also don't want to mess with them. It's such a complicated thing. And then obviously the most obvious one, I think, is Truman Show. There's The Matrix, but for me, it's The Truman Show, which I don't know about you, but that movie tripped me out and still does. To this day, sometimes when things happen, I'm like, okay, is this part of the story? Is this part of the plot? Like, usually it's when something really bad happens. And it's just like, come on, executive producers. I know this is dramatically interesting, but just give me the win. Like, do you have, like, I don't know, have you ever had that? Like, I don't know if you watched that movie and had a similar reaction.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, like you're talking deja vu, synchronicity, manifestation, alignment, right? And
Yeah.
Truman Show, like I see that as like, yeah, it's a simulation, but in a very different world way. Like that's like we're all in the same physical world, and they physically have created a simulation with actors, right? And then you're
Yeah.
talking about this other one that doesn't really sound like a parallel dimension. There's like two actual Earths, and then there's like parallel dimensions where there's many, 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 infinite possibilities, right? But they're not existing in the same dimension. So like you can't actually get to it by like, taking a spaceship or I don't understand the physics or the mechanics of that. I guess none of us really do, and that's why we can't go there. There's only theoretical, interpretations. It's my understanding, or I could quote some comic book or comic book lore at you.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it's very interesting stuff. I think I lay mostly in the spiritual kind of Eastern sorts of concepts with this, and
Wait, what are those? Because I actually want to use some of my 10 minutes to hear what that is, because that to me is
yeah,
very interesting.
well, like at least just my understanding and interpretations. Like as many potential universes there are interpretations of like those types of concepts, right? I'm definitely not the be all end all of understanding here, but yeah, I mean, I would just say that these moments happen infinitely, that life just happens over and over again through different, either reincarnation or, the same person. If the universe is expanding and contracting infinitely over infinite time, then this very like moment itself could be happening again infinite times on the scale of infinity, right? Maybe that's the alternate dimensions. That's one thought. Just that we're not our bodies, and that the consciousness isn't residing like in the mind. It's like this is like a receiver of spirit, and that's where ideas happen, and that's why like we could be having the same thought at the same time. When you have a loved one, like that you're so close to, you're both just like tuning into the same vibration, the same signal. I don't know. It's
Uh-huh.
hard to sum this all up into a simulation. There's just so many overarching circles of like, just energy and reincarnation and manifestation. And I think it's like kind of where they're all kind of intersecting is this idea of simulation. I mean, I don't see it as a simulation at all. I just see it as just like, just so much mystery, and that we're more than these spacesuits. And and that where is the consciousness residing? And I like to imagine there's this ether stream of consciousness that we're all kind of tapping into, and that's even like what AI is tapping into. It's just consciousness. It's just awareness. I've even heard it said that the universe itself is just that pure consciousness, that it all could be reduced to one. It could be many, many universes and dimensions, but also just like one consciousness, that we're all just the same thing on some level there.
I mean, that sounds almost like where religions come from. If you think about
Exactly.
like
Mhm.
that
Exactly.
so many different religions also have the same God, but if like it's not necessarily God or the Holy Spirit, where it is it's this sort of collective consciousness that all of us are tapping into, and it's just some sort of energy that exists in the universe.
Exactly. Zeros and ones, one many paths, one truth. Like why are they all coming up with the same truth? Why is it that, it's like no electron or electron, zeros and ones. That's also how DNA is built. That's computer coding. It all could be reduced to zero one, like nothing or the presence of the one.
So there's some scientist that had some sort of revelation about looking at DNA and actually seeing what he considered computer code within the DNA itself in terms of ones and zeros.
Yeah, that was almost the tough part where it's like this topic is just so big. I watched this long YouTube video about like trying to explain multiple sort of the science behind multiple
Multiverse?
universes. Yeah. And that's where I'll be completely honest. I was just like, this is so complicated. And so also I think the hard part I chose was it being explained by a like PhD physicist, because it felt the most legit. And I was like, this is so complicated. Where he was describing where like every moment particles are separating, and potentially that's the creation of another universe. And he was like, just imagine every bubble in the sea, but every bubble is its own universe, and they're constantly multiplying. And it's just like, so how many me's are out there? And does another me have a six-pack? Like, does another me have more restraint when it comes to like eating chocolate?
Definitely.
Like, it's just, and also, is it bad? This is where I feel like I'm such a Gemini. And real quick, I'm gonna be that like people who overthink and just constantly think things are their fault. The moment you think about, I think the psychology behind there's many potentially used, and there's so many versions and possibilities in the universe. It's, I think, equally liberating. And then, this idea of like, oh, there's so many things, but then there's this part of me that's like, well, clearly I'm the fuck up version of myself.
Well, how do you even measure? How do you even, like, when you start thinking about this stuff, what is the polarity? Where is the measure? How do you even measure?
It would actually mean that there is no concept of fucking up.
There's no concept of fucking, there is infinite isness.
Infinite fuckery.
Infinite fuckery. That's the title of this episode.
That's better, yeah.
That's your next album, Michael. Go for it.
I think it is.
All right, Ryan. Are you ready?
Batter up.
Yes.
And goo.
So, what's funny is you brought up the Truman Show. The Truman Show is actually based upon some of the origins of this philosophy. So it's all philosophy. The origin story, or the original kind of time we know about this concept being discussed, is all the way back to 375 BC by Plato, where he had an allegory of a cave. And the description, or the way it's written, is that somebody is chained up inside of a cave with a light shining behind them, and they're watching and interacting with the shadows of things behind them. So there's somebody manipulating or influencing their reality, but the reality is that their reality is actually outside the cave, which is emphatically what the Truman Show was, right? He was strapped into a cave with the things that he could interact being manipulated around him, when in reality was outside the dome. Then we go on to Descartes. Meditation first philosophy, I think, is what it was. And he talks about an evil demon tricking him into believing like a false world is around him. And this is actually where we get the think, therefore I am from Descartes. And then, obviously, I think, Michael, as you pointed out, we have a fascination with this concept, and it tends to like pop up in, basically sci-fi since we've been writing sci-fi.
Yeah, well, because I think it's not unlike death, which is another thing that we don't understand, but we're constantly trying to grapple with. So when it comes to the arts, yeah, it's fascinating.
And then the guy who really brought it, I was going to say the guy who brought it back most recently is Nick Bostrom in 2003, where he wrote a book called Sim Theory, just a little bit about him. Like, his role as a philosopher is he thinks about big human-oriented problems, like how do we avoid extinction, and thinks about these at a philosophical level, which kind of had him put together this whole idea of like, if we're already simulating worlds, what's the chance that there is another humanoid-oriented species, place, thing that that we're a simulation? And I actually like the way this was explained, that, if there is another world out there that operates with that level of computing power, we might, in terms of a parallel universe, might just be one instance of a simulation happening in multiple ways, right? Where the probability for our world is tweaked in certain ways so that they achieve or get to see a given outcome, right? While alternatively, that probability, or our multiverses, are also have tweaked probabilities so that they can simulate what the right answer is, or hopefully arrive at an answer to make better decisions. So that was one of the kind of interesting multiverse describers. The thing that I get into that I like, and this goes back on conversations I've had before about the whole, like, is consciousness quantum? And this gave me an opportunity to dig like a little bit deeper into that. And I got to pull up a little bit of few of my notes here really quick. So we do have quantum material in our brains. And in a previous one, I had talked about the fact that quantum behaviors in warm, wet environments, as far as we know it, tend to not be a thing. It tends to make it hard. But I've also talked about the fact that I think we have quantum behavior around us. And I actually think quantum behavior is probably much simpler than we understand it to be. We just aren't there yet. That being said, the microtubules that are in our brain, they're like cylindrical protein structures inside of our neurons, quite possibly create an environment that's capable of allowing superposition to happen.
What to happen? What's
superposition? So superposition is when a quantum material or a quantum thing behaves within probability. So that's how a photon, we would see it as a wave. And once we observe it, superposition collapses and we see it as a photon and we see it as a thing.
When as soon as you observe it, it changes the particle. Yeah.
And that's an observation effect, right? So we're observing that photon at a point in time when its probability has collapsed to where it exists. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah. No, totally. It's like one of the fundamental principles of quantum physics. As soon as you observe something, it changes, right?
Fully changes. Well, so this is kind of the interesting interlay with, are we a simulation in conjunction with, is consciousness quantum? So if you have this idea that we're part of a simulation, you very likely need computers within the simulation that are operating within their own probabilities in terms of decision making, right? So our observation of our lives, like this moment, is actually the collapse of a superposition. So a probability has collapsed to a reality through our minds. So while you have this big computer that is potentially running the simulation, our brains are actually subcomputers, if you will, that are also running quantum, or actually operating within quantum science or quantum probabilities that are being superpositioned down to observation in real time. So this is like the collapse of superposition right now.
Can I ask you a question about that? Is that cool?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the difference between what you're saying and everything just being made of the same material and of the universe, and us creating with our own consciousness? What is the difference between the universe being made of consciousness and us being part of that and just creating when we're observing it changes? To me, what you just described was us just all being the universe expressing itself and creating through observation.
100% agree. So I was just running down the simulation path, right? So there's a chance that like I think they say it's 50-50 shot when people talk about probabilities, whether or not it's actually a simulation or whether we're base zero, which is we're creating this as we operate through it.
What's
we're
the
operating
difference,
with them.
Like, what's the difference though? And if a computer was a part of this universe, then we're just really talking about microcosms of a macrocosm, and that could go on infinitely in every direction.
Infinitely. Yeah.
So ultimately everything is part of some kind of greater structure, even if we're in a computer within a computer within a computer. Isn't it still just like the 13th floor? Have you seen that sci-fi movie?
I'm aware of it.
13th floor, the 12th floor. It's like, spoiler alert, right? Can I spoil the film?
I mean, I spoiled everything.
They discover that they're in a simulation, and then they get out of the simulation to discover that simulation is also within a simulation.
Yes. Well, so I think the only difference there is that maybe like if we're base zero, if you will, it doesn't mean that there's other things. It just means it's us and we're crafting as we move together. Now, to your point, doesn't matter? Probably not.
Well, like if you go to the Vedic tradition, right, the smallest form of creation I know in quantum physics, we're talking like quarks at the smallest level, right? And they're all vibrating. And in Vedic, they talk about Prakrishi, the energy of all things, even thoughts are made up of it. And my point is, in that style of thinking, Prakrishi would even be making up these computer chips and whatever, the coding would all be made of the same matter, and full of consciousness, and on some scale, like even if it's a simulation and a simulation and a simulation, everything is still made of the same stuff. It's all just made of stuff of the universe. It's all Prakrishi. It's all consciousness.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It can all be reduced still to the one.
The reality is it's all kind of the same material.
It is all the same.
End of the day.
Is it all just carbon? Is that what it is?
But just like when we're saying it's man-made, right? I think there's a certain hubris to that. It's man-made. There's this ego that we're kind of putting on it. Everything is made of the universe. We didn't create anything new. We're just rearranging stuff of the universe. We're not forging new things. And anything that comes from us is on a level just natural because it's all made of stuff of the universe. How could it be anything else ultimately? You can't create or destroy matter. You can just rearrange things, right?
Well, I guess where life would come from is that your interaction with those things adjusts your probability in terms of your personal outcomes.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I don't know, like, because like obviously it might all be the same thing, but depending on those things that we interact with, the probability of where our life goes changes. I mean, or do you feel like life is deterministic? Like, in other words, it was already where
It's
you will be.
predetermined.
Yeah.
I feel I have a knowing that it's all perfect however it is, and it's just like I don't know if that makes it predetermined or not, but like wherever we are, here we are, and how could it be anything but perfectly the way that it is? I think that's again like a monkey brain arrogance to say like this isn't the way it's supposed to be. Well, then why is it this way? Is more how I look at it. I think.
Oh, so yeah, I was gonna say I agree with that. I think I'm coming more from the space of like there were clearly things that we interacted with that ultimately brought us together. I agree with you. Like, in other words, it was meant to be. There's nothing to argue with why this is,
Here
right?
it is. Here it is.
But there was probably something somehow, somewhere.
Yeah, you could trace the
Or
paths. You could
do you
trace the
see what I'm
path.
saying? Like, there is
You
a
could trace
path that
all
goes
the
back to
interlacking
that brought us
circles that have
together.
brought us here. Yeah, the lines,
Yeah.
sure. And like you could say these were the other dimensions, and like Michael was talking about, all these coin flip, which way did it go, and it all splits, sure.
And the option
And
is that all
also,
of them are happening all at once.
yeah,
Like if that play Constellations is true, then it's like literally every time you make a decision, another universe is created because, just by, do the simplest thing where you were like, well, I was going to get coffee, but then I didn't. I was going to get coffee at this coffee shop, but instead I got it at that one. And somehow you doing that changed everything
exactly.
because and that's Beth, actually, that woman who talked about this. She said it's a way that also she stays positive thinking about this way. Like if something goes seemingly wrong, she
Yeah,
said her feeling is that like it's because she wasn't supposed to be there. So say she like, is really angry because she hits a light and she's running late. And she's like, but maybe if I made that light, I would have been in a car accident. Something bad could have happened to me.
yeah,
So it's just like, and I think that is, it's a lovely way to be because then you can sort of be
yeah.
like, anytime something bad happens, you're like, well, it's sometimes really tragic things happen and it's hard to say that. I don't know. I think it's as you say, this is where like science meets philosophy, which is a tricky place.
It's just like whatever happens, how could it be anything other than what's perfectly supposed to happen? And Charlie Chaplin, what did he say? Like life is a tragedy up close, but a comedy from far back. And that's also like a very Zen thing to say. And just like basically, if you get really close to it, it's like this is a tragedy. But if you zoom back, the and then of it, there's another thing that's going to happen. There's a thing that happened before, and many things will happen. And even more truly, we'll all be dust soon enough. And what does it really matter? So just enjoy this brief dream.
I was gonna say, it's funny, lately I have been reminding myself I'm in like a kind of a rough patch professionally at the moment. And I have to remind myself on a regular basis. I'm like, I will get somewhere else and be somewhere else and look back on this as if it didn't matter. Like,
Of course you will.
because it actually won't matter at some
And
point.
then we die.
Yeah.
And all of us are but blips in this universe that we speak of, you know.
Yeah.
It's the truth. We're meaningless.
And that from that we can derive whatever meaning we like also. We
Yeah.
can we
That's
can just be
true.
so grateful and joyful. It's like I think it's all true all at once, everything that we've all said.
Exactly. There are no rules. It's just like this podcast.
Michael,
Yeah.
I think you just won.
I think everyone just won.
Oh, is this the first time that
Aw.
everybody wins? Because we're all made from the same thing. And
How about everyone wins in every dimension in this episode?
oh my God, I love that.
How do you measure that? And that's going to lead
Awesome.
into the next thing is like, the meaninglessness of polarity beyond right and wrong.
Yeah.
You're saying, is that the subject for next time, or is that
no,
the
totally.
meaning? Okay. I'm gonna have to write that down. Oh boy.
Yeah. What is it? Hold on.
Sometimes people just go cheese.
We could workshop the exact thing, but it just basically an exploration of like polarity and the meaninglessness of that, like right or wrong, what difference is there between right or wrong, yes or no, really what in the almost the scope of what we're saying, like the meaninglessness of polarity. You could look at that through the lens of like, Zen, or just, culture, how hundreds of years ago, like showing your knees was considered taboo, or like, these things are always changing what we think is right or wrong. It's just, it means nothing. You zoom out enough, it really, 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 none of it really makes any sense. That our logic and our morals and our feelings and all these things are just really ultimately insane. And it's an interesting topic. I don't know how you'll research it, but
I don't know, but it's a really fascinating point, because my first thought is, I feel like the origin of it is for protection, right? To be like, we can't have chaos for our own self to literally survive. But at what point did it switch from self-preservation to control?
yeah, well, someone was like, "Give me that."
Yeah, someone along the way went, wait a second. If I manipulate this, then not only do we protect ourselves as a group, but I control the group. That, I don't know. It's an interesting topic.
This is a great reality. Thank you for a very sweet chat, you guys.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael.
All right, and we'll be back next week to have another really fun discussion.
I'll listen. You have a new follower.
Yay!
Yay!
And in the meantime, everyone, enjoy this wonderful universe that we're all connected and tuned into. And thank you for tuning with us for this little period of time.